Hey everyone, what's going on? This video is going to be the exact reason why I continually tell people that they need to pay attention to the happenings that are going on in their own life. And don't just focus on how the cabal is ruling the mainstream media and, ruling our history and everything else. There's a lot more that is going on with all of this. And I truly think that we are never going to put an end to the cabal without understanding more about what is going on in the world and how all of this works and why the world works this way. The true problem to me is that the world works this way, right? I've documented countless times how my life is synced up to the mainstream media stories and so on. And it just seems that not enough people are paying attention to these things and really picking up on the patterns that exist. And there's definitely something very, very fishy going on in this truth community. And, it could just be the way that this world works, or it could be something to do with the cabal and YouTube agents and so on. And I'll let you decide what you think after watching this video. I'm not trying to call anybody out because I truly don't know what exactly is going on, but there is a definite pattern with the truth community from way back when and even recent stuff. And it's synced up to, once again, when Zach started the website called All for Truth, and it had the umbrella logo, and then the guy named the Umbrella Man on YouTube made a video threatening him, telling him to watch out on Christmas Eve, and then a car crashed into his house on Christmas Eve. But I will come back to that in just a minute. But recently, the last few videos that I've made, I talked about Allen Iverson a whole lot. And what happened, part of the sync with all of this was that somebody had watched one of my old Allen Iverson videos from 2015. And I had a 4-part series, and they were all 15 minutes long. And then in 2019, YouTube restricted the first video of that series, and then they completely deleted it. And they did it all by the number 65. And then I realized that I even put that video out by the number 65, and I didn't even know I did it. And then me and Allen Iverson had this connection to False Flag together, and so on. And I was watching for the date January 9th because of all this too, because Allen Iverson's birthday is 6/7, and the 19th prime number is 67, and his nickname was AI, like artificial intelligence, AI. A is the first letter, I the 9th letter, so a lot like a 19, and a whole bunch of other 19s that were important. So I was wondering if there was something important for me to see personally on the date 1/9, and I absolutely saw what it was. And before I get into that, the reason that I had to make them videos 15 minutes apiece was because I got a YouTube strike back in August of 2015 for my video about the Bridgewater shooting, where this guy named Vester Flanagan supposedly shot up the news crew while they were filming in Monetta, Virginia. And this was interesting because just earlier in that month, we had the death, or on July 31st, so the day before August or whatever, we had the death of Rowdy Roddy Piper, the wrestler. And he's in the movie called They Live. And in that movie, he learns that the world is like aliens, and the aliens have been manipulating the world through this satellite communication that makes people not be able to see the true things that are going on in the world. That's channel 54. And he goes in and he shoots up the news people, right? Towards the end of the movie, he shoots up the news. And the day after Roddy Piper died, Ronda Rousey, she won her fight in 34 seconds, and then she took on the name Rowdy Ronda Rousey, like Rowdy Roddy Piper. And I talked all this about the number 34 like crazy with her way back when. And I talked about how Kobe Bryant was synced up to it. And I'll get to that too, but Ronda Rousey is going to be turning 34 years old in February this year. And in a few weeks, we're going to have the 34th Royal Rumble. And remember, Ronda Rousey made her first appearance in the WWE, or she came out at the Royal Rumble saying that her first official match was going to be at WrestleMania 34. And there's a whole lot synced up to this because Ronda Rousey originally came into the WWE and WrestleMania 31 in San Francisco when The Rock Johnson, brought her in stage to fight Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. And I know you have to understand wrestling, but there was something really interesting with that too, because in regards to AI, because Triple H came out dressed like the Terminator, and that new Terminator movie had just came out, Terminator Genesis, and they had the bus crash on the Golden Gate Bridge. And anyway, The Rock's in the movie San Andreas, where he flies the helicopter. And just before Kobe Bryant died in a helicopter crash, we had the death of The Rock's father on Shane McMahon's birthday. And Shane McMahon just so happened to be in a helicopter crash before WrestleMania 34. And then Kobe Bryant dies in a helicopter crash, and Kobe Bryant was all synced up to the number 34. I have a video I'll leave in the description, but he even died on like the 3rd month and 4th day of the NBA season. That's why he tore his Achilles age 34. He scored 34 points in that game, and he won his first Oscar on 3-4 and a whole lot more. Couldn't play with Shaq, number 34. Been documenting about this over and over with Kobe Bryant. But anyway, another big thing that happened in 2015. So we had the Bridgewater shooting right after Roddy Piper dies. So they shoot up the news right after Roddy Piper, the guy famous for the movie They Live, where he shoots up the news, gets shot or dies. And on June 23rd that year, just before Roddy Piper died, the band Disturbed released this music video right here, right? Called The Vengeful One. And look what happens. Look what happens in this music video here. And even notice the ball that's in the middle here at the news station. It looks like the coronavirus, kind of. So hold on. Let's just play this video. Hold on. So he comes in and he shoots up the news people, just like on They Live. That's why this video got taken down or whatever for a little while, right after the Moneta Bridgewater shooting, right? So the whole story is that Allen Iverson, somebody commented about my Allen Iverson video and it got taken down. And I pointed out how I had to make a 4-part series because I got a YouTube strike for my video on the Moneta, Virginia shooting. And what's even funnier about that is part of the reason that they took it down was because I showed a picture that originally they showed a white guy shooting it up. Like it literally was a white guy. It wasn't even a black guy. And then all the other, like they took that down and then all the other people, you know, he turned black all of a sudden. Like it makes no sense. But the original picture that I saw on one of the news things, it was a white guy standing there. But of course they took it down completely, so I can't prove it anymore. But it was not even the same guy. And it's just so stupid. And then people pointed out how his hand wasn't black in the picture when he's holding the gun. Well, that's because originally they showed it was a white guy, and then they took that down and said it was a black guy. Like, it's so stupid. But anyway, so I have this kind of a synchronicity thing with They Live. Not necessarily a synchronicity, but an interesting thing going on with this pattern that I'm following, and it's synced up to the movie They Live. And then we get the RV bombing on Christmas, right? And I pointed out that the RV bombing was all synced up to Bobby Simpson right here, right? And I talked about how Bobby Simpson lives near Nashville. And last year in 2019, he told me about the Batman building because I was following this Batman narrative. And I even mentioned how Harley Quinn was important to that. And just days before the Christmas bombing this year, I blogged about a guy named Richard Quinn, who Zach did an interview with, and he did that interview on his 42nd birthday and a bunch of other things, you know. And it was Richard Quinn, and then I talked about Harley Quinn in my old post, and then we got an RV bombing that was just around the corner from the Batman building, and the Batman building is also the AT&T building, and then the RV blew up. It was next to another AT&T building, and AT&T is important to 9/11 because AT&T made 911 the emergency dialing code in the year 68, and AT&T was even founded 6 months and 8 days before 9/11, and the World Trade Center construction began on August 6th of 1968, and that was the year George Bush graduated from Yale and Skull and Bones, and his birthday is a span of 68 days before 9/11. You know, a whole lot more. Even Tom Brady comes out of nowhere after Drew Bledsoe gets injured against the New York Jets right after 9/11, and the New York Jets haven't won since the 1968 season. And, you know, all synced up to 9/11. And Bobby Simpson, his full name even equals 911 in the Jewish Gematria. And that's important because Tisha B'Av equals 911 in the Jewish Gematria, right? And think about the dancing Israelis that they told us, you know, in the mainstream media to get us thinking that it was all Israel and the Jews and whatever else, right? Because they control the truth community, just like I've been saying forever. Even the truth community is controlled, just like the mainstream media. Even the things that we think we know, a lot of times are controlled, right? And even if you don't realize it. But the interesting thing, also Nashville, Tennessee equals 260 in the Francis Bacon ciphers, which I had said have been important since 2019 with the Chinese pig year, Francis Bacon. And I even used them ciphers, and I came to the conclusion because of them ciphers in 2019 that there was going to be some type of divide in the truth community. And it just so happened, it was all connected to August 11th. And then on August 24th, which is August 11th on the Julian calendar, and earlier in the year I said why the Julian calendar was important too, and Julian Edelman winning the MVP of the Super Bowl and so on, and Julian Assange being arrested. But anyway, on August 24th, which was August 11th on the Julian calendar, Derek, that has the Gematriaeffect calculator, he made a video talking about how he was going to go to Anarchadelphia, which Zach got kicked out of going to, right? Zachary K. Hubbard got kicked out of going to Anarchadelphia, and then Derek makes a video saying that he's going to go, and then it causes this big rift because Derek didn't stand up for Zach in his video with Pat Leach and so on. But that day was important to 2016 because that was also the same day that Andrew Luck announced he was retiring from the Colts. And if you go back to 2016 and Zach's car crash and all that, he thought the Colts were going to win the Super Bowl. And remember, the Colts got eliminated from the playoffs on Christmas Eve, the same day as the car crash. And earlier in that year, they gave us a story about Andrew Luck and his flip phone, how Andrew Luck still had a flip phone. Then they flipped the script. And then just after that, we learned reverse gematria. And some guy made a blog mocking my blog called James Jumper. And he starts it off talking about me, and he refers to me as my name Nad. N-A-D, my name in reverse. And of course, his name equal the same as reverse gematria and a whole lot more. So all of these happenings, it seemed that they were leading us to learn the reverse gematria, right? Almost like they were teaching us the reverse gematria. Almost like they wanted us to know. Almost like that was being manipulated. That's why they flipped the script, and then we learned reverse gematria. You got to think about this, right? And that was another thing leading up to the August 11th thing in 2019. I was saying how I didn't think there was going to be a big event. We were going to learn something and learn how some different ciphers were going to be important to pay attention to. And they just so happened to be the Francis Bacon ciphers that I have continually shown endlessly every day that they are important to all of these mainstream media stories, you know. We just had the Siegfried, whatever, the guy from Siegfried and Roy die, and he died 8 months and 5 days after after Roy Horn died, right? And the word tiger and the Francis Bacon equals 85, and their birthdays were 85 days apart. We also recently had the death of the Tiger King's father. Can't think of the guy's name right now, but his name equals 195, and Tiger King equals 195 in the Francis Bacon gematria, right? He also died 2 months and 2 days before Joe Exotic's birthday, the Tiger King, right? And remember how he was sentenced on the 22nd day for 22 years, and the show came out 79 days before Carol Baskin's birthday. Carol Baskin equals 79, and it's 22nd prime number. And he was married to a 22-year-old and a bunch of other shit like that. I mean, just so stupid, right? Anyway, the moral of the story is that Bobby Simpson was connected to this. He lives in the area near Nashville. He told me about that Batman building. I blogged about it over a year ago, and I talked about Harley Quinn. Then I talked about Richard Quinn just before this Christmas RV bombing. And then his name just so happens to be Anthony Quinn Warner, right? And what's even funnier about that is, like, you know, Time had just merged with Warner, right? Time Warner. And then he had the RV bomb that had the announcement that there was going to blow up and so on. It was warning you with the Time Warner, Anthony Quinn Warner. So there was this big narrative, right? Bobby Simpson. And what's interesting about this, too, is with Bobby Simpson is that in regards to Zach's website, All for Truth, just recently, Zach went on to one of Derek's videos with, he did an interview with a guy named Jason Goodman. And then Zach came into the chat and was talking crap or whatever. And then, you know, saying, Derek won't tell you all this stuff, blah, 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 blah. Then he made his own video addressing what happened in that video. And in Zach's video, he says that Bobby Simpson is the reason that All for Truth basically shut down, right? He says Bobby Simpson is the reason for that. So I'm going, huh, that's pretty interesting. And his car crashes on Christmas Eve. Think about how Bobby Simpson, Zach says, is the one who took down All for Truth with the umbrella logo. Then the umbrella man threatens him and a car crashes into his house on Christmas Eve. And this sticks out even more because recently, on Christmas Eve, we got the death of the truther Jeff C. Or Jeff Censored, right? Let's put it out here. Jeff Censored. I've known it was Jeff C. for years. But Jeff Censored. And this is his last video that's still running right now. No views. This was the video that he was supposed to do before he supposedly died. And what are the odds that he puts Alex Jones with a face that looks like They Live on it? Huh? Puts the face like They Live. If you go to his videos here, let me just point this out really quick. Go look at all the videos on his channel here. Not one of them has any reference to They Live. If you go through the whole thing here, there's not very many of them. But literally, not one of them has a reference to They Live. Is the Joker. Not that I can see. No They Live, but his final video just before he dies, and he supposedly died on Christmas Eve. You know, think about this. He dies on Christmas Eve. Right around the time of Zach's car crash, A Call for an Uprising and Jeff C. did a video with Zach, and they talked about Pizzagate, and they had this big debate and so on, right? So there, and Zach even reposted that video on his channel and whatever else. But so just think about that. That was right around the same time that Zach's car crash happened, and then him and A Call for an Uprising and Jeff Censored all get into this big debate and so on. And now Jeff C. just so happens to die right as he leaves this video up. Go back to it. The Alex Jones one with the They Live picture. The only one on his channel that has any reference to They Live. Also, what's very strange is that recently, on December 26th, the same day that Zach made his video about Jeff C.'s death and whatnot, I got a comment from Mary Toffelmeyer. And she commented on one of my old videos. Can't remember I don't remember the date of this video, but if you've been following me, remember after Zach's car crash, my uncle died at the Jesuit University of Creighton, and he got in a car wreck, or his truck or whatever, and he went 5 miles off the highway on a gravel road, and he was going in the wrong direction. None of it makes any sense whatsoever. They had to ping his cell phone just to find him because he never came home. Doesn't make any sense why he'd be off the main highway like that. And then the next day he dies at the Jesuit University, and he is a 4th degree Knight of Columbus and a whole lot more. But the very same day that he died, I got an express shipped letter in the mail. They spent like $25, I think it was. I can't quite remember. It was like $15 or $25 to send me this letter in the mail, and I open it up, it has $300 in it, and a big letter basically telling me just to believe in God, right? It's kind of weird, right? And so my uncle dies, and it was all about the number 166, even reverse gematria equals 166. And then in April that year, the next year, 2017, whatever, not even a year later, but in April, the Umbrella Man made another video talking about the number 166. and it was 166 days after my birthday. And I was talking about how there was something to do with Zechariah, Daniel, and Mary in regards to the Bible and the angel Gabriel, who the angel Gabriel only sees Zechariah, Daniel, and Mary. Zachary, K. Hubbard, me. And I wondered if there'd be somebody named Mary, and then on his show the next night, some lady named Mary Toffelmeyer calls in, and of course her name equals 166. And she calls in talking about how she's Montegraff's next victim, and so on. He's trying to kill her pet pigs, and, you know, the word pigs equals 166 and a whole lot more. But what are the odds her name equals 166? And I was waiting for somebody named Mary to be important to this, and then Mary Toffelmeyer calls in. And I was sitting next to two stuffed animal pet pigs that my daughter told me to watch while she went to bed. They were stuffed animal pigs, and she called them her pets. And this lady calls in and says Montegraff's trying to kill her, or the Umbrella Man's trying to kill her pet pigs. Or pet pig, you know? It's pretty interesting how that all synced up. Especially with my uncle being all synced up to 166 and so on. It's right after Zach's car crash. So now this lady reaches out to me for the first time ever, right? Messaged me for the first time ever, the day after Christmas, the day after the RV bombing, right? It's also interesting in regards to the number 166 that RV Christmas bombing happened exactly 166 days before Bobby Simpson's birthday, and the address was 166 something, and Twin Towers equal 166 as well. And I've noticed that a lot of things that equal 166 in the regular ciphers, like, for example, I'll just type Mary Toffelmeyer here. It equals she equals 166. But in the Francis Bacon ciphers, a lot of times something that equals 166 also equals 218. And 218 is very important. You know, Osama bin Laden in the Francis Bacon ciphers equals 218. And Twin Towers, like I just said, but Twin Towers equal 218. And They Live equals 218. And Jeff Censored equals 218. And Zach started All for Truth 218 days before his birthday. It's a humongous number that's important. You know, remember how Alex Jones, I think about Jeff Censored, how he used the They Live with Alex Jones. Alex Jones got kicked off of social media on August 6th, which is the 218th day typically. And that was also the day that World Trade Center construction began in 1968. And that's also the day that the guy who coined the term conspiracy theory was born. His name was Richard Hofstadter, and he died 2 months and 18 days after his birthday, and his birthday was on the 218th day of the year. And I'll explain a little bit more about this in a little bit, but I feel like what I'm supposed to learn from this is that the Francis Bacon ciphers are offering this greater narrative. I'm learning a lot more of these events from the past and how they're actually important to some other things. And the date 218 this year is a very interesting day because it is 3 months and 8 days after my 38th birthday. And it's also 6 months and 28 days after Zach's birthday. And remember, after All for Truth and whatnot, he got his channel deleted on 6/28 that I will explain here in a little bit. But that was also, his birthday is also a span of 6 months and 28 days after Christmas Eve when that car crashed through his house. And this is interesting when you think about the Bridgewater shooting that was on 8/26, which is 6/28 in reverse. And in 2018, after the Stoneman Douglas shooting, we had that, was it a shooting? Can't remember where it was. It was a school shooting in Maryland, I think it was. And then it was all synced up to the WWE and the guy wearing the pink gloves, the Austin bomber. Think about Stone Cold Steve Austin. And also think about Austin, Texas, which is where Alex Jones is from. And I'll explain more in a little bit. But later that year, we got another newspaper shooting, and it was in Maryland. And it was on the date 6/28, 6/28, 8/26. We get these two newspaper shootings, and I talked about how it was connected to the Royal Rumble. because the address was like 888 Bestgate something, 888, and Royal Rumble equals 888, and Triple H, the wrestler, Triple H is 888. And he was synced up to Ronda Rousey and how she began her WWE career. Anyway, let's stay on the they live narrative, because there's absolutely a they live narrative going on within the truth community. So, and I'm just trying to show some of these things building up to it, you know. So Bobby Simpson connected to the Nashville Christmas bombing, the RV bombing. Then Jeff C. dies, and, you know, Mary Toffelmeyer reaches out to me, and it's all synced up back to 2016 when a call for an uprising, and Jeff C. had a debate with Zach, and he started All for Truth, and the car crashed into his house, and so on, right? And what's so interesting is that after I made my Christmas bombing video, this guy started reaching out to me again. Let me find him here. KJV exposes all, Veritas 77 axiom. And I've known this guy for a really long time. I learned a ton of stuff from this person probably 10 years ago, or maybe even a little bit more than that. Probably 2011, 2000, somewhere around there, right? And, you know, it's funny, a lot of people think that I haven't been on YouTube that long, like, because Zach usually tells people that I learned from him, and then I started making videos ever since, and that's not even close to the truth, but I just let it go, because it doesn't ever usually, even, you know, whatever, it doesn't matter to me, but I just want to show, like, I even knew, like, things about Gematria, like, from, like, way back in the day. I don't know if you can see this here, but I sent this message to my friend, let me see here, January 17th of 2013, and I was talking about, because Veritas was talking about a crane theme back in the day, and this was right after Sandy Hook, and then we got another crane thing. And it's funny, you know, like I said, I've recently blogged about this too. I always thought it was M16 and not MI6. And I recently explained why that was important, but, you know, I wrote 1 plus 6 is 7. I even wrote BBC, 2 plus 2 plus 3 equals 7. So I knew stuff about Gematria before I even knew who Zach was. You know, his blog didn't even start until October 24th of 2013. But I did learn a whole bunch of stuff about Gematria from Zach. I learned that it was called Gematria, even. And I didn't know at the level that it was being done. So once I saw what Zach was doing, I was like, man, this is some crazy stuff, you know? Like, it's, if you take code words and you know, nouns and whatever out of the news stories, they all have this pattern that goes along with them, right? And whatever, I knew about syncing up dates and all that way before Zach. But moral of the story is I learned a whole bunch of stuff from this guy. And he says that he taught Zach too. And I mean, I appreciate the things that he does, but he's a born-again Christian, and he's all about Jesus and whatever, and he thinks Gematria is bogus, and he likes a call for an uprising. And anybody with a brain, no offense to this guy, but like if you even listen to the debate with Zach with a call for an uprising, he doesn't seem like the most genuine person in the world. You know, yeah, he might be exposing the Hollywood movie matrix, but there's something off with that guy. He's not right, you know? He's not a good person, it doesn't seem, but this guy used to be called just Veritas 77 Axiom. I don't know if I told you that, but way back in the day. And he doesn't believe Gematria, and so on. And let me just give him a lesson really quick in Gematria, because he says there's too many ciphers and whatever else. And the thing is, you have to know these other ciphers. Like, for example, Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant equals 41, 157, 58, 113. And I mean, I've been talking about 41 with Kobe Bryant for years. He wrote that poem called Dear Basketball when he retired. Dear Basketball equals 113 and 41. Kobe ends up dying at the age of 41 in a helicopter crash that crashed 41 minutes after takeoff, and the pilot's name was 41, and his final basketball game, they took him out with 4.1 seconds left, and he scored 60 points, and the rest of the team scored 41 points, and he's known for scoring 81 points in a game, and when he did that, the rest of the team scored 41 points. He even retired against the Utah, after playing against the Utah Jazz that equal 113, and, of course, the Utah Jazz is also one of the teams that Michael Jordan had once retired against, and Michael Jordan equals 113. That's why we just had the James Harden trade on 113, because the National Basketball Association equals 113 as well. But just pointing out here, Kobe Bryant, he died age 41, 157 days after his birthday. What are the odds of that? Los Angeles Lakers equal 58. Before the season even began, before Kobe Bryant died, I talked about how Dwight Howard was important to the narrative that was going on because DeMarcus Amir Cousins joined the Lakers, right? And DeMarcus Amir Cousins tore his Achilles on January 26th, 126, exactly 2 years before Kobe Bryant died on 126. And he played for New Orleans, so equals 126. But when he tore his Achilles, it took him out of the game with 8.1 seconds left. And look at his name, 81. And, Kobe Bryant equals 81. And Kobe Bryant had the Achilles tear when Dwight Howard was on the team. And notice that DeMarcus Cousins also equals 58. And Dwight Howard also equals 58. Just like Los Angeles Lakers. And then Dwight Howard signed with the Lakers on Kobe Bryant's 41st birthday after DeMarcus Cousins got injured. Of course, Dwight Howard was on the team when Kobe Bryant tore his Achilles, and then Jerry Buss died that same year. And this year, Jerry Buss's wife dies just before Kobe Bryant dies in a helicopter crash. So he was like a curse for Kobe Bryant. But I'm just pointing out, there's countless other examples that you have to pay attention to all of the ciphers because they all make sense. And, the Jewish ciphers, when I was talking about how it's connected to 9/11 and Bobby Simpson's name equaling 9/11, it's important because in Jewish gematria, Tisha B'Av equals 9/11. It's all about the two towers, or the two temples, right? And then think about the two towers that fell on 9/11. It's important. There's a reason that cipher is important to that narrative that I'm talking about. And right now, the Francis Bacon ciphers I've been following because of synchronicities and other things, right? You have to pay attention to the things that are going on to understand when a certain cipher is important. That's based off of these other ciphers. You have to pay attention. There's a lot more to learn than what this guy has been talking about. It's just ridiculous, To say gematria is, not right and to use too many ciphers, that's not right. I agree, there are some people who are just taking all of the ciphers and then just building this narrative, but I am following a narrative because of, I'm following it not because I'm creating it, because it's happening, and I'm paying attention to why certain things are important, and following a narrative, and using gematria to understand that narrative. There's a difference between what some other people are doing and what I'm doing. And, anyway, I was scrolling through his videos the other day, and, he only had one video. He sent me a message saying to watch his video, and he put this one up, A Call for an Uprising versus Zach, Hubbard, Dan Barrett. And he put out I don't know what, he must have had all these other ones private or something, because I swear this was the only video that he had up when I came to this channel. And I watched part of it, or most of it, but when he starts talking about me in the video, he starts talking about let me find it here. He starts talking about the RV bombing. So let me find it real quick. This video that I made right here. And when he points out, he says that the bomber here, Anthony Quinn Warner, he looks like Russian vids. Like he looks like the avatar of Roddy Piper on Russian vids. And it's not identical, but it does kind of look like, Roddy Piper, the way his haircut is and so on. So I thought that was interesting at the time, but I didn't really put it together. And, whatever. I thought that was interesting. I thought about it a little bit. And on January 9th, then, Zach made a video. And recall that I was watching the date January 9th. Because of the Allen Iverson stuff, and that was synced up to the Bridgewater shooting, and that was also synced up to the movie They Live, right? And Zach, out of nowhere, on January 9th, does an interview, or does a video, with Russian vids, and his channel isn't Russian vids anymore, it's called RV Truth, and I'm going, the RV bombing, right? And then now Zach does an interview with him, and it's pretty strange because Russian vids made a whole bunch of videos about Zach's car crash being fake and so on. He showed the G and said it was all masonry and the ladder. He did all this stuff. They haven't been friends forever. And then now all of a sudden Russian vids supports Zach and they make a video together. Doesn't that seem very odd? Just randomly right after the RV bombing and so on. And I was like, there's got to, and our Russian vids, his avatar is the Roddy Piper thing from the movie They Live. He's all about They Live. That's why Zach even uses that picture right here at his deal. And they talked about the movie They Live. And, would you believe that Russian vids is all synced up to this too? Like, go to his channel here, RV Truth, and you'll see that he created this new channel on April 19th. If you go from April 19th to the Christmas bombing, it just so happens to be a span of 251 days. And RV Truth in the Francis Bacon ciphers equals 251. Anthony Quinn Warner also equals 251. The guy who was responsible for the RV bombing, they said, right? RV Truth 251. He makes that new channel 251 days before the Christmas bombing. Recently I talked about the Capitol building too. Capitol building equals 251. U.S. Capitol equals 251. I talked about how it was synced up to the Buffalo Bills because that guy was wearing the horned hat with the buffalo fur on it, right? Now the Buffalo Bills are going to be playing the Kansas City Chiefs. Of course, the Kansas City Chiefs won Super Bowl 54 and Bills equal 54 and so on. But They Live is about channel 54 as well. The news channel is channel 54 and the 54th prime number is 251. Think about how RV Truth, he's all about They Live and Roddy Piper. And then Zach makes a video with him. Right after I'm watching all this stuff, I'm watching for the date 1/9. And then on 1/9, Zach makes a video with RV Truth. Absolutely synced up to the RV bombing. And I just read a Zenith the Alpha comment earlier today. And I never even put it together, but it is interesting. The play on words, it's a different spelling, but the Capitol building, and think about capital letters, even though it's spelled different. And, the Francis Bacon ciphers are important to capital letters, right? It's not, you have to make sure that the letters are capital. So it's pretty interesting. And he points out that Trump in all capital letters equals 218. And think about the presidential warning that was at 218. And it was all synced up to Donald Trump, like 138 days before the date of 218, and Donald Trump equals 138 and a whole lot more. But there's definitely something going on. 218 is a date that is important, synced up to 9/11, obviously. That's, Osama bin Laden, Twin Towers. The construction began on what is normally the 218th day of the year. Also, They Live equals 110. And think about the 110-story World Trade Centers. Even I wrote Twin Towers 110 in here, but they were 110 stories tall. Christmas 110, The Pentagon has Highway 110 next to it. Osama bin Laden 110. Russian vids made this new channel on April 19th, which in 2020 was the 110th day of the year. And notice Roddy Piper equals 140 and RV Truth also equals 140 in one of the other Francis Bacon ciphers. So absolutely synced up. They even did this video 194 days after Zach's birthday. September 11th equals 194. Remember, Tom Brady equals 194 as well, and Tom Brady's the golden boy that got to start playing after Drew Bledsoe got injured against the New York Jets. Right, the Jets haven't won since this 1968 season, and once again, remember all the things with AT&T synced up to the year 68 and World Trade Center construction. So there's something important. I also, just before I realized this, I documented about Dolph Lundgren, and he's the Russian that kills Apollo Creed in Rocky, something I've been talking about recently too. And he's also he got his movie start in the movie called A View to a Kill, which is the movie with the James Bond movie with Tanya Roberts, the girl who just died, the Bond girl. And his name equals 201. His birthday was 11/3, which was the day of the election, which is also Colin Kaepernick's birthday. And we just had that girl from the movie Election die, which I will talk about later here because it's synced up to this, right? It's synced up to what I'm talking about and the date 2/18, I think. It's all about Omaha, Nebraska, and Omaha equals 38, and that girl was 38 years old, and it's a whole lot more. It's also interesting that the reason I blogged about Dolph Lundgren was from the movie called Masters of the Universe. Let's see if I could find it here. But it was because Arnold Schwarzenegger did that video where he talked crap about Donald Trump, and he had the Conan O'Brien sword. And Tanya Roberts, the girl who's in A View to a Kill, she was also in the movie called The Beastmaster that came out the same year as Conan the Barbarian, right? And they're both like sword and sorcery movies, and it just reminds me of this movie called Masters of the Universe, where Dolph Lundgren is He-Man. He-Man, She-Ra. Remember how Donald Trump wanted to box Putin? And then I had a bunch of synchronicity with Family Guy and whatever, with Peter Griffin wanting to box Putin right after that happened, and someone left me a message about Putin and a plane, and then there was a plane crash in Russia. And just think about the recent news, right? Russia was just in the news for something. I can't remember what it was now, but Russia was just in the news because Joe Biden's going to be the president, and they dropped out of something. I can't remember what it was. I'll have to go back and look, but you know, they were just in the news. I also talked about North Korea not that long ago. Then North Korea was in the news. So it's definitely something important. Arnold Schwarzenegger, also the Terminator, right? Think about AI and the Terminator. Another thing I'm just now thinking of in regards to the movie Election and the election that was on 11/3, which was Colin Kaepernick's birthday. Remember the Bridgewater shooting was on 8/26, and the next year in 2016, Colin Kaepernick took a knee. That was the first time that that's when it got real big that he took a knee, was 8/26. And remember, right that same week or whatever, same weekend, Teddy Bridgewater got injured just before playing the Rams. And that was a humongous thing I was talking about for years, right? And even Colin Kaepernick was synced up to the Rams. Like, I think it was that season when I can't remember it all. I have to go back. But it was all synced up to the Rams and the Eagles and Nick Foles and Sam Bradford. And then the Eagles went on to win the Super Bowl in 2018, and the Rams made the Super Bowl in 2019. It was all synced up to that Teddy Bridgewater getting injured. And that was right around the same time that Colin Kaepernick took a knee. So I don't know. I feel like there's something important to that. But I want to go back to the stuff with Zach, because the number 186 and 218, they have some type of relationship, right? And Zach is really synced up to the number 186. And point here. So Zach, his recent thing is that he went to Portland at Powell's bookstore on January 16th, and he got sprayed in the face with bear spray. And would you believe that this happened 186 days before his birthday? And it happened on January 16th, and Portland equals 116? I mean, what are the odds of this, right? This is what I'm saying. Is this the cabal that did this? Possibly, but, I mean, or it just happened. I mean, you know, but 186 days before his birthday. Portland also equals 100, and his full name equals 100. I feel like he's pointed that out before, but, you know, 186 days. And let me go back to here, but remember his channel was originally deleted on the date 6/28. His YouTube channel, after the car crash in his house, his YouTube channel got deleted on 6/28, which is the day that leaves 186 days in the year. And that car crash was 186 days before 6/28, the day that leaves 186 days in the year. And then Zach made one more episode of the Gematria effect on the 186th day of the year, and then he took a 2-week break. And his name, as I said, I just want to show you again, Zach Hubbard equals 186 in these Francis Bacon ciphers. And this is important because if you read his new book, you know, the coronavirus book, at the very end of the book, he talks about how he went to Louisiana And remember, right after he went to Louisiana, we learned a lot about 201 and Event 201, and Dr. Paul Cottrell reached out to him while he was staying in room 201. And anyway, this is why I think that it's kind of like reverse gematria, right? They're building this up somehow. It's like they're almost manipulating us to see this stuff, right? Louisiana's 201, then he comes, he makes this trip, and then he comes back, and it's all about 201 ever since, after he went to Louisiana. But he, in his book, he says he stayed at the Trim. I think it was the Trim Hotel, where he stayed at room 201. Look at the Trim. 186, right? And it was the Trim. It equals 186, and his name equals 186, and in his book he says that for most of his life people have called him Zach Hubbard, right? So Zach Hubbard 186. And there's more to it, like in these other ciphers here, he said he stayed at, in Baton Rouge, he stayed at the Red Roof Inn. That, equals the same as Baton Rouge and so on, right? This is right after LSU was in the college football championship. Even funnier, too, like a call for an uprising and all that, they call him Zachary Greenblatt. Look at this, Zachary Greenblatt, 186. Because they said he was actually Joshua Greenblatt, or it's because a long time ago Zach said that his last name was possibly Greenblatt because his father heard that from his mom and so on, right? But he doesn't know for sure and whatever, right? That's all it was. He didn't say that he really was a Greenblatt, but it's funny they call him Zachary Greenblatt, and that even equals 186 in Gematria, so it's this interesting number. So they delete his channel on 6/28, the day leaving 186 days in the year, 186 days after a car crashes into his house, on the day leaving 186 days in the year, and back in November, YouTube suspended his channel in November of 2020, and they decided to suspend his channel over a video about Elon Musk, and it was 218 days before Elon Musk's birthday, which is on 6/28. Elon Musk's birthday is 6/28, and in the Francis Bacon ciphers, if you write out Elon Musk, his name just so happens to equal 218. And notice how in the Francis Bacon ciphers, SpaceX equals 186. And if you go to these other ciphers and you write out Elon Reeve Musk, his name equals 186. And recently, he just surpassed Jeff Bezos for being the richest man in the world. Look at Jeff Bezos in the Francis Bacon ciphers, 186. 201, Jeff Bezos founded Amazon on the 186th day of the year, and Elon Musk just surpassed Jeff Bezos for being the richest man in the world 186 days after the 186th day where Amazon was founded, right? 186, 201. Remember how William Henry Gates equals 201, and he was important to Event 201 that happened, just before coronavirus began. That's about a coronavirus pandemic and so on. Bill Gates also founded Microsoft 172 days before his birthday. Bill Gates equals 172 in the Francis Bacon ciphers. He founded it with Paul Allen. Paul Allen equals 201 and 186. What are the odds? Interestingly enough, Paul Allen also used to own the Portland Trailblazers, the City of Roses, something I've talked about a lot too. So, there's something important to how that's all synced up, right? 186. Zach even used to live in Seattle, which is important to Amazon. It's also important to Microsoft. Also, if you look up all of these guys, like, let me find it here. But I noticed that they're all about AI. Even the guy who reached out to Zach about Paul Cottrell, the guy who reached out to Zach about Event 201 and whatnot, when you go to his channel, the first video he has on here is about AI, right? AI screwing mankind, and then you look up Jeff Bezos, and they right in the beginning of his Wikipedia, it talks about AI, and Paul Allen, it talks about AI, and Elon Musk, it talks about AI, right? Paul Cottrell even wrote a book called Artificial Intelligence. Think about how I'm talking about Allen Iverson and AI, and there's something very important to AI and how it is synced up to this. And, it's something I've thought about for a really long time. Possibly they did possibly somehow when you're a kid, they do somehow put some type of AI inside of you. Or, I mean, I'm just questioning things, right? That's what you're supposed to do as a truth seeker. Maybe it isn't synchronicity. Maybe we do live in the matrix and it is controlled. And if they can get something inside your body, they can, you know, the AI can control when a person has a baby on a certain day, so it syncs up to this code, right? You know, there's a lot of things to think about. It could all be to do with AI and synced up to, you know, them controlling us, and all of this is happening because of AI, right? Or it could just be, you know, there's lots of other things that people think. It's all God. You know, some people think it's all the cabal. I mean, I don't think that it is all the cabal, though. I think this is the way the world works, but the more and more you think about it, it's like, I feel like it's showing me AI, but if it's AI, then that means they're controlling me to even say this right now. So why would they want me to tell people about it, you know? There's a lot to think about, but I'm just pointing out there's something important to AI that I'm following with this narrative. And anyway, let's go back to this made post. It's so hard to explain this stuff without getting off topic, because there's so much going on with it, and you really, really, really have to pay attention. And I just feel like a lot of people, I don't know if they don't have the brain capacity or what, or they're so focused on this hating the cabal, which I get, but if you really pay attention, you'll start to see that it's not just the cabal, and there's a lot more going on, and the whole world works this way, and whatever else. But so I made this video about Zach, or I didn't make a video, I made a post about Zach, talking about the Elon Musk thing, right? And how he was synced up to the number 186, and then Zach made this blog post about it, and he posted on here that he got a death threat for the date 218 a while back, right? February 18th. And he pointed out that in the English extended cipher, the word death equals 218. And, you know, this cipher, I've talked about how it's important a little bit with like the death of Sean Connery and so on. There has been a little bit of synchronicity telling me to pay attention to that. So, you know, it's interesting the word death does equal that in the English extended. And it's really interesting because the date 218 just so happens to be 6 months and 28 days after Zach's birthday here. Let me just point out really quick. Well, I'm missing a 0 on my finger here, so I got to push this little weight thing. But 6 months and 28 days after Zach's birthday is 218, right? Think about 628, how they took down his channel. Something important. The car crash was a span of 6 months and 28 days before his birthday. They took down his channel on 6/28. This day is also, if you go from my birthday, my 38th birthday, to this day, it's 3 months and 8 days. 3 months and 8 days after my 38th birthday. I mean, I don't think I'm going to die on this day, but it's interesting, you know, that's the numbers we often sync up to it, but, you know, hopefully making this video will stop me from dying on that day, but it's interesting. Jeff C. died on 12/18, which was 38 days after my 38th birthday. And I just documented about, I had synchronicity with Franz Ferdinand, who is the reason that World War I began. And Franz Ferdinand, he was born on 12/18, 38 days after my birthday, and he died on 6/28. So, just something to think about, you know, in relation to war, World War. Got Joe Biden coming up. Got Russia and North Korea and whatever else. It doesn't mean that, but 38 could also mean that I'm going to, you know, learn something great or expose something awesome about Gematria, because Gematria 38, Kabbalah 38, it doesn't have to mean death and murder and whatever else, right? It could be connected to that, but, you know, we'll see what happens, you know. But I hope that Zach doesn't die on that day or something of the sort either, because he's synced up to that day a whole lot, 218. So I just think we need to be wary of this date, 218, right? The presidential alert on 218, Trump in all capital letters, 218. Think about the Francis Bacon ciphers, important capital letters, the Capitol building attack, the World Trade Center. Zenith pointed that out. The World Trade Center equals 218 as well. The World Trade Center. if I could spell it there, World Trade Center equals 218. Remember how Osama bin Laden 218? And so on, right? Also, conspiracy theory equals 218. Conspiracy theory. And remember, the guy who coined the term conspiracy theory was Richard Hofstadter, who he was born on the 218th day, which is 8/6, which is also the day that World Trade Center construction began in the year 68, and then he died on 10/24, which just so happens to be 2 months and 18 days later, and he coined the term conspiracy theory. And recall way back in the day, or recall in 2018, I was talking about that Austin bomber synced up to, Alex Jones and whatnot, and Alex Jones got removed from social media on 8/6, and that Austin bomber had the pink gloves, and that same day we had the synchronicity with the singer Pink was in the news, and I talked all about some of this stuff. It's hard to organize, but that the singer Pink was in the news that same day, and I was following this big narrative with the color pink, right? If you go back, I was in 2017, and around December, I watched the movie The Number 23 again with Jim Carrey. And in that movie, he does the gematria of the color pink, and he also has that character called Fingerling, and I looked up Fingerling, and it means pinky finger, according to Wikipedia. And then a few days later, I was watching one of Zach's videos, and he was showing a clip of Alex Jones, and I got up to go pee, and my cat was mad because he was on my lap, and I went pee, and I came back, and I went, "There you go," to my cat to jump on my lap, and right as I said, "There you go," Alex Jones said, "There you go," on the video, and I was like, what in the world, and then that, whatever, it all synced up, and I ended up looking up Pink because of the pinky finger and all that, and I saw that her first big hit was called "There You Go," and then I deduced that she was probably going to sing the national anthem that year. Then she ended up being announced to sing the national anthem at the Super Bowl that year, and whatever. There's so much stuff going on, because in 2018 in the summer, I was talking about the Mighty Ducks and how there was an important theme with the duck going on. Then like 2 days later, or the next day, we got the duck boat crash in Branson, Missouri, or the duck boat drowning. And I talked about how it was, before I talked about how it was synced up to Goldberg the goalie, and then on 8/6 that year, the same day Alex Jones got kicked off social media, Goldberg the goalie was arrested, or in the media, for being arrested for being on meth and whatever. And the last movie that he was in was called Drill Bit Taylor. It was a John Hughes movie, and it was about Owen Wilson's pinky finger getting chopped off. And John Hughes is the guy who wrote the movie Pretty in Pink, and he died on August 6th, and his birthday was 2/18. And Molly Ringwald, the star of Pretty in Pink, her birthday's also 2/18, and her name equals 186 in Gematria. And the coach on the Mighty Ducks, who's also in the John Hughes film called The Breakfast Club, Emilio Estevez, his name equals 186 in Gematria. And in 2019, just before I learned about the Francis Bacon ciphers being important, I got a strike on one of my videos on 2/15, just before the Aurora shooting in Illinois, and that was synced up to the Batman shooting and the duck boat crash that happened in Seattle on the Aurora Bridge in 2015, right around the time Pope Francis was in the United States. But that music video that I had, it had a clip of The Breakfast Club with Molly Ringwald in it, and I'm pretty sure that's why they took it down, even though I had that video up for like 8 years, and then they finally flagged it and gave me a strike or whatever for it. And then Zach got a strike for when somebody hacked his live stream, and his hack, or that strike, lasted until the date 6/28, right? 6/28. And what was interesting is if you look up The Breakfast Club, it came out on the date 2/15, the day I got a strike about the movie The Breakfast Club. And then Zach's strike, that lasted until 6/28, was the same day that the movie St. Elmo's Fire came out. And St. Elmo's Fire and The Breakfast Club are the two movies that are important to what is known as the Brat Pack, with Molly Ringwald and Emilio Estevez and so on, right? So they were syncing it up to the Brat Pack and John Hughes and Joel Schumacher. who just recently died, and Joel Schumacher is the guy who made the Batman movie with Jim Carrey, where Jim Carrey uses Gematria, right? And Jim Carrey, he also made the number 23, and so on. So there is some interesting narrative with how it's synced up to, pink and whatever. The Austin bomber had the pink gloves. And then remember on October 24th that year, 10/24, the same day that Richard Hofstadter died, the same day that Zach's first ever blog post was put up on his blog, the same day that the Astros World Series began in 2017, that I'll talk about in a second, but on that day we got the mail package bombs that went to Obama's house, right? And the Clintons and the Obamas got the mail package bomb. And that mail package bomber, his name was Caesar Sayok, and then the Austin bomber was Mark Anthony Condit, Mark Antony and Caesar, and we said we were paying attention to the Ides of March, and then on the Ides of March we got the Christchurch mosque shooting. So, there's something very important to what is going on with this. Super synced up to 8/6, and I've been following 8/6 2022 a whole lot. It's really important. I believe it's the 186th day of the Tiger year, and it's also when Tisha B'Av begins in the year 2022. And the Tiger thing is all synced up to the number 22, Tiger King, right? Sentenced on the 22nd day for 22 years and so on. But in regards to the number 186 and the Umbrella Man, so the Umbrella Man's the guy who threatened Zach and then his car crash. The original Umbrella Man's from the JFK assassination, and his name's Louis Witt. That equals 186. And his middle name's Stephen. Louis Stephen Witt equals 186. Right? And we recently had the umbrella stuff with the George Floyd thing and the autonomous zone. That once again was in the Seattle area where Zach lives. So there's something going on with it. Like, 218 is also 212 days after his birthday, and that's another big number with COVID and whatnot. COVID in the Francis Bacon ciphers equals 212. COVID 212 and Seattle, Washington equals 212. And if you don't use capital letters like how CNN does it, COVID-19 equals 212. So let's put in Seattle, Washington for you really quick. Seattle, Washington, 212. That's where COVID's supposed to begin in the United States. That RV bombing was important to the Batman building, right? And whatever, the Batman building in Nashville. And, the Batman shooting was on the anniversary of the moon landing. Zach's birthday was the very next day when Neil Armstrong actually stepped foot on the moon. And Neil Armstrong equals 186. And it was from Apollo 11. Apollo 11 equals 186 in the Francis Bacon ciphers. So there's something big time with it. Remember, right after, in 2017 too, after Zach's car crash, in 2017 on April 15th, Zach made a random blog post about the baseball player Darren Daulton. And Darren Daulton has a book called If They Only Knew, and it was about, this coding kind of. It didn't necessarily have a bunch of gematria, but it just talked about, a lot of this stuff with the world, and it talked about the numerology of 9/11 and so on, and If They Only Knew equals 186. And Darren Daulton died on the date 8/6, the 218th day of the year. And that book also equals 192, and Zach's post was 192 days before 10/24, which is the day the World Series began that year, with the Houston Astros going on to win it. And Darren Daulton equals the same as Houston Astros in Gematria. And Zach also made that post 113 days before Darren Daulton died. And think about it, how it was the 113th World Series, right? So, and then that day is important to conspiracy theory. Right after the day after Darren Daulton died, another baseball player named Don Baylor died. And if you look him up, Don Baylor, his final birthday was 6/28 of 2017. And even Zach did his video, when he made a video about Don Baylor and Darren Daulton, he put them videos together and talked about them in the same thing. So it's important. I don't know, 6/28, 2/18, and 186, they're all related somehow. 2017 was also the year when I talked all about the Jesuits. I was talking about the Jesuits all year. Talked about how my uncle died at Creighton, and I had a bunch of synchronicity with the priests, and the priest who supposedly molested me named Father Fitzgerald, and the USS Fitzgerald happened, and I talked about the Price is Right, and I was watching for the Jesuit anniversary that year, and on the Jesuit anniversary, someone from Las Vegas called me, and nobody was there. And then 3 days later, the guy who got the perfect showcase on the Price is Right named Terry Neese reached out to me, and he was from Las Vegas, and he was even wearing a Las Vegas shirt when he was on the Price is Right. And then the very next day, we got the Las Vegas attack, but his name 186. My uncle was also important to the Flintstones that equal 186. And just before the Jesuit anniversary that year, on 9/24, my grandma died. And I always thought she was from Chattanooga, Tennessee. It turned out on her obituary, it says she was actually from Flintstone, Georgia, which is like 10 miles away from Chattanooga. And right after the Vegas attack, on 10/6, Ralphie May, the fat comedian, died. A guy I had been following and thought that he was going to die that year. He ended up dying, and he died in Las Vegas, but he was originally from Chattanooga. And Chattanooga, Tennessee, in the satanic ciphers equals 911. And think about the Flintstones, the second movie that's called Viva Rock Vegas, that doesn't have John Goodman in it, but John Goodman was part of the reason why I was following Ralphie May, because he's in The Big Lebowski, where they go to Ralph's and it has 9/11 on his card. And he's also King Ralph, and, you know, just interesting. So, Fred Flintstone. Once again, Zach started All for Truth 218 days before his birthday. The guy who started mocking my blog, when he referred to me as Nad, so my name in reverse, his name equals 218. My uncle's name equals 218. Mary Toffelmeyer, 218. Jeff Censored, 218. If you write out reverse gematria, I think I showed this earlier in the video. Possibly not, but reverse gematria in the Francis Bacon, 218, right? They Live, 218. Osama bin Laden, The World Trade Center, A View to a Kill, Tanya Roberts. I had all this synchronicity with 218 too. So when I was writing up this blog post, well, whatever, let me explain something here. I'm going to explain a little more about 218 and synchronicity. But before I wrote this blog post, I have to take my girlfriend's brother to work almost like 5 nights a week. Like I've said before, I have to drive like, I don't know what it is. It takes like a good hour and a half to go there and come back. But I dropped him off at work, and then I turned on the Gematria effect on my phone to listen to it on the way home, and right when I turned it on, Zach says, all right, we're going out to McMinnville, Tennessee. And he's like, I think it's a first-time caller or something. I won't play the clip here, but you can go listen to it. He says, McMinnville, Tennessee. And I was like, man, this must be Bobby calling in, because Bobby told me he's from McMinnville, Tennessee. And then when he answers the phone, actually, I am going to play it. Let's see if you can hear it. But it's just some guy mumbling like fat fuck or something like that. I don't even know. Let's see if you can hear it. Or see if it'll even play.
McMinnville, Tennessee. I think we got a first-time caller. What's up, Tennessee? Tennessee, you're on. You're wrong. You're on the show.
I don't know if you can hear it. I can barely hear it, so you probably can't hear it, but you can go listen to it on the Gematria effect, and I was like, what are the odds of that, you know? And I had just messaged Bobby right before I left to take him there. He messaged me on Facebook about something, I can't even remember what it was, my drummer or something, and yeah. He messaged me about my drummer, because my drummer sold his house and moved to Illinois, and he didn't know he was going to move to Illinois, but now he quit the band, basically, and his name equals 218, and my singer, the only other person in the band, his name equals 218. And I was like, what is going on with this? And it wasn't too much longer. Like a couple calls later, some guy called in and talked about sleep paralysis. And he compared sleep paralysis to, can't remember what it was, but I had just talked about sleep paralysis with Bobby Simpson. And in 2019, I talked about sleep paralysis with my drummer, right? Me and my drummer both had sleep paralysis on the same night, and I went to band practice the next day, and he was talking about sleep paralysis, and I was like, that's crazy, because I had sleep paralysis last night, you know? And way back then, I talked about, so there must be something important to these numbers, 201 and whatever else, and then 2 months later, we found out that 201 was really, really important to what's going on in the coronavirus time, so. But notice their name's 218, 218. Talked about all this way back when, so. It's interesting, like 2 callers later, the guy talks about sleep paralysis and patterns and whatever else, right? And that happened 218 days after Bobby Simpson's birthday, too, 218. The date 218 is also interesting because that's the day that Martin Luther, right, the Lutheran guy who support to the Jesuits, right, he died on 218. And what's so interesting about this, being 3 months and 8 days after my 38th birthday, is that I've talked about how I have this sync with Martin Luther. He was born exactly 499 years before I was born. We were born on the same day, which is also the same day that Pope Paul III, I think he died on that day, right? He was the Pope who created the Jesuits. So he died on November 10th. Martin Luther was born on November 10th. I was born on November 10th, 499 years later, which is the 95th prime number. Dan Barrett equals 95. Daniel Edward Barrett equals 95. He had the 95 Theses. You know, the Jesuit anniversary is on the day leaving 95 days in the year. Martin Luther King Jr. died on what, the 95th day of the year? So, there's something very, very important to this. Think about the Jesuits, Martin Luther, 218. I don't know. I hope this makes sense. It probably doesn't. It is a lot to take in, but there is something very important to 218. And, you know, in regards to the movie They Live and They Live equaling 218, this year on November 4th, it is going to be the 33rd anniversary of that movie coming out, right? So, it's going to be the 33rd anniversary. Also, the song by the band Disturbed, let me find that really quick. The album that this song came out on was called Immortalized, and notice that this album came out on the date 21/8, right? Which was also the same date that the Great American Eclipse happened, and a day that Derek talks about a whole lot. So another 218, 21/8. The song, actually, the actual single came out 38 days before Roddy Piper died, and They Live equals 38. It's a whole lot more here. You know, Roddy Piper, the movie They Live came out 201 days after his birthday, but in the movie his name's John Nada. That also equals 201 in the Francis Bacon ciphers. You know, also 132 like Catholic Church, also 11-9, which, you know, could be a 9/11 as well. Zach's also going to be turning 38 in 2021 as well, so. And recall, like, in regards to 8/11 that we were talking about big time, which is also a number I've talked about a whole lot leading up to this with Hulk Hogan. And think about the WWE, that's Hulk Hogan's birthday. And, you know, Hulk Hogan, that he said the N-word right around the time that Roddy Piper died and he got kicked out. And, you know, he always said brother, think about that. And then I talked about how he got his revenge against Earthquake and the city of brotherly love. It was all synced up to Bridges. That goes back to Allen Iverson. Stone Cold Steve Austin. His song Break the Glass is actually made by the band Disturbed as well. And Stone Cold Steve Austin also had a feud with Roddy Piper right around that time that he died too, because of his thing called Piper's Pit, his podcast. So I'm going to pay attention to the Royal Rumble this year for sure. The 34th thing of the Royal Rumble. Also, you know, The Rock's dad, Rocky Johnson. I'm thinking about it. I think I forgot to put this in here, but Rocky Johnson, his famous tag team partner, let's see it here, was Tony Atlas, and this guy just so happens to be from Roanoke, Virginia, which is, the area of where that shooting happened, right? The Bridgewater shooting, so Roanoke, Virginia. Think about how Virginia was important to Allen Iverson, too, right? He's from Hampton, Virginia, and Roanoke, Virginia. Vester Flanagan, they killed him in, like, Falls Church, Virginia. And then think about the Austin bomber and so on, and how they were synced up to the Christ Church shooting. Of course, his birthday is also 8/24, which is Vince McMahon's birthday, and that's the day that I talked about how Derek made the video with Pat Leach, the same day that Andrew Luck announced his retirement, which is also Black Mamba Day, Kobe Bryant Day. So 8/24. Then he dies on Shane McMahon's birthday, and Shane McMahon was in the helicopter crash before WrestleMania 34. Osama bin Laden. The World Trade Center attacks were a span of 186 days after Osama bin Laden's birthday. Also just 185, and World Trade Center 185, Donald John Trump 185, Bridgewater 185, the lady getting shot up was Allison Parker 185, Vester Lee Flanagan II 185, Ronda Rousey equals 185, or Ronda Jean Rousey, one or the other. Hulk Hogan's name equals 185. He's reported to August 11th, but me and Zach, I'm exactly 8 months and 11 days older than Zach, too. It was all synced with Tisha B'Av and, the Messiah returning through the Golden Gate. The Golden Gate in San Francisco. WrestleMania 31, when Ronda Rousey came out of Triple H, he was the Terminator guy, and it was in San Francisco, where The Rock's from, and he's in the movie San Andreas. The Allen Iverson stuff was all synced to earthquake and bridge symbolism, so there's something very, very interesting about it. And that's why I'm saying we need to pay attention and start watching some of these things. But, even like, so after I made this big long thing about 218 and 186, right? January 14th. After I got done this, I went to rewatch the movie They Live. And I just went to Yahoo and I typed in They Live online free or something. And the first one that came up was this video from BitChute. And I was like, well, that's interesting. It's on BitChute, so it'll work. It's free or whatever. And I don't got to click through a bunch of ads. And I tried watching it the night before, but I had fell asleep or whatever. So I was going to go back and try to watch it again. And when I went to it, I looked down at the clock and it said 2:18, but I didn't get the screenshot in time. But I was like, what are the odds? I'm looking at this at 2:18. I just randomly start watching this again after I write about 2:18. And what's even funnier is if you really, really look at it here, look when this video was posted, 2/18 of the year 2018. And I randomly start watching it again at 2:18 in the morning. And it's put out on 2/18 of 2018, and I'm talking about how it's all synced up to the number 218, and They Live equals 218. What are the odds of this happening? I also looked up BitChute, and BitChute came out the same year in January 2017, right? This was right after Zach's car crash and so on, right? Right, the same month that my uncle died. My uncle's name equals 218. It's just craziness. I also had synchronicity with Rich Quinn, right? So, Rich, in my last video, I talked about, how Rich was important to this, right? Richard Quinn. Zach did a random video with him and it just so happened to be his 42nd birthday, and birthday's 42 and a whole bunch of stuff. And he reached out to me and basically told me that all of the things that happen in your own life are just law of probability. And, it's not done by the cabal, so we don't need to worry about it. And You know, the only thing that he cares about is what Zach puts out and everything else, and I just absolutely disagree with him, and I'm not trying to talk crap on him, but I feel like you're not a real truth seeker if you're just going to do that. You're not going to try to learn more and evolve or anything, and you think we're going to stop a cabal that can manipulate your mind, and they've been doing it for thousands of years. You think we're just going to, like, storm the White House and, you know, whatever, kill all the Jesuits and Freemasons and whatever else, and all these people who know about this knowledge, we're just going to kill them all? It's not going to solve the problem. Like, it doesn't solve the problem whatsoever, because that revolution's going to happen by the numbers, and then everything after that is going to happen by the numbers still. It's all still going to happen. So, I get what you're saying, but, you know, there's more to learn. You can't just stop learning and just only share everything that Zach shows and whatever else. I get it, you're trying to wake people up, and so am I, but, you know, once people get to a certain level, they need to start taking this to a different level, right? And there's a lot of people who just only follow Zach, and they're not advancing this, you know? They're just stuck in this, everything is a sacrifice, even though it could be, but they're cherry-picking words a lot of times, and they're not making it make sense. They're not following it the right way, if that makes sense. Like, you can't just say that every time someone dies at the age of 67 that it means it's a blood sacrifice. It could be, but that means that you believe that, you know, every single celebrity is, you know, every single story in the media is all coded by the numbers and whatever, you know. It could be a blood sacrifice, don't get me wrong, but that is just cherry-picking a phrase and saying it. It could be something else that's positive that equals 67. It's more important to say to me, like, if they died age 67 on the 67th day of the year, that was 67 days after their birthday, and their name equals 67. Like, that makes more sense. You don't need to throw in the word blood sacrifice in there because you don't know for sure if it was a blood sacrifice. That is more of an opinion. You can say it is interesting that there's a song called Murder by Numbers, and, you know, they use this code, and the phrase blood sacrifice equals 67. But, you know, you can't just say blood sacrifice every time it's a 67. There's a whole array of other meanings and other narratives that an individual can follow, and that's what I'm trying to convey. Like, anybody can do this and follow their own path, right? It's not all about what the cabal is doing, you know? I don't think so anyway, right? I'm not saying that I know for sure, but I am saying I think that there's a lot more to this than just the cabal, and we're never going to stop them. We're not going to stop them unless we learn more about what is going on in the world and how we can either use this or rid the system altogether, you know? But, you know, he didn't even want to read my whole message. It's too long. It was like, what kind of, you know, whatever. I mean, I'm not trying to talk crap on him. It's just like, if you're not going to read the whole message, like, why? I'm explaining exactly why you're, like, what you need to know, but you're not going to read the whole message, like. But anyway, he says it's all law of probability because, you know, it's just all law of probability. It has nothing to do with, if it's not anything to do with the cabal, then he doesn't need to worry about it. It's like, oh, whatever, but you don't realize how much that everything is being coded, like. But, I mean, I can't hate on him because I just feel like a lot of people aren't at the same level as me. Just like how a lot of people who know the simple things in Gematria, if they're not on the same level, you know, all the people in their life aren't on the same level, and they're always mad at them, you know, because they don't get it. Well, it's just because you have to be at a certain level and be ready for certain things. So maybe eventually someday Rich will stop doing what he's doing and start to see that there's more to it, you know, but it's, you know, I'm trying to be nice because I'm not mad at him. But I wrote about all these 186s and how Zach was synced up to it. And right as I was like talking about it, I started hearing the TV say Zach a whole bunch of times. And I was like, what the hell? Why is the TV saying Zach? And it was on Nickelodeon. My son was like sleeping on the bed or whatever. And he was watching some cartoon before this came on, apparently. I don't really pay attention to it, but I mean, the character of the show named Zach on Friends, his was John Stamos, and this is hilarious to me because John Stamos equals 186 in the Francis Bacon ciphers, and when I first learned the importance of the Francis Bacon ciphers, it was right around the time of the Lori Loughlin scandal, and I noticed that her name equaled 186, her full name 186, and I talked about Ace of Base equaling 186 and Jodie Sweetin equaling 186, and on Full House, that she's famous for, right? Lori Loughlin, John Stamos, Jodie Sweetin. On the 186th episode, John Stamos is like the manager of Jodie Sweetin's band, right? Stephanie. And they'd sing the Ace of Base song called The Sign, right? I Saw the Sign. It's all about spiritual awakeness. So just thought it was funny, you know. And then I looked up law of probability, what Rich calls it. Rich calls all of this the law of probability. Law of probability. Just so happens to equal 186. What are the odds? You know, that's law of probability, I guess, right? The law of probability, and I have synchronicity with my TV with the guy who equals 186. And the very next day, I'm at work, and I go to ESPN, and look at this. Dan Quinn, one of the headline stories was Dan Quinn was the favorite to be the Cowboys' defensive coordinator. And I'm like, what are the odds of this? Because, you know, Anthony Quinn Warner, when that happened and the RV bomb happened, I talked about how it was important to the Dallas Cowboys because they play in AT&T Stadium and their next game was going to be against the New York Giants. And New York's important to 9/11 and so on, right? AT&T. I also said I had a friend in Texas, in Dallas, Texas, that's his name is Kevin Quinn. And he, on his Facebook, it even said he used to work at AT&T. And when you come and look up Dan Quinn, look when Dan Quinn's birthday is, September 11th. Dan Quinn. And Dan Quinn in Gematria, 186. And he replaced Mike Nolan. Mike Nolan, 186. Law of probability. Dan Quinn also equals 41 and 40. Mike Nolan also equals 40. And this happened a span of 41 days after 9/11, or also 40 days, right? Dallas equals 41. Daniel Patrick Quinn equals 110, like 110-story World Trade Centers, Osama bin Laden. It happened on January 11th, 111, New York 111, 9/11 leaves 111 days in the year, and so on, right? So, what are the odds? I talked about that in my last video, I think, or at least I blogged about the Dallas Cowboys being important. And here we are, Dan Quinn going to the Cowboys right after I talked to Richard Quinn again. Anyway, I'm going to talk about one more thing, and then I'm going to end it here. Hopefully, I want to make some shorter videos. Hopefully you can hear these birds are driving me nuts, and I have nowhere else to go. And I put a blanket over these birds, and they won't shut up. Drive me crazy. But we just had the death of this actress named Jessica Campbell from the movie Election, and oddly enough, I talked about my drummer equaling 218, and I had synchronicity back in September. It was actually on September 11th. On September 11th, I had synchronicity with my drummer, or whatever. And he was talking about the movie Election, and we were talking about Chris Klein, who is a guy from Omaha, Nebraska, and he's in the movie Election. So now this girl named Jessica Campbell from Dies. I've never seen it. I just watched it today, actually, but it also stars Reese Witherspoon, and I just talked about Reese Witherspoon not that long ago, because they had I talked about how she was important to 9/11, and she lives in Nashville, and they had this pointless article about her being flummoxed by Ryan Phillippe's money joke at the 2002 Oscars that was just after 9/11, and flummoxed equals 260, so does Nashville, Tennessee, and the Christmas is 260 days before 9/11. But it's interesting, this girl, she died on 12/29, which is the same day I blogged about Reese Witherspoon. And they didn't report it until January 13th. And, you know, like, look at this post where I had synchronicity with my drummer. I blogged it on 9/12, but it happened on 9/11. And it's about the Umbrella Academy, right? Think about the Umbrella Man, the umbrella being important. Yeah, that's when I talked about the sleep paralysis stuff. It's all, but election equals, this girl died at age 38. Election equals 38. Omaha equals 38. That's why the 38th president, Gerald Ford, was born in Omaha, right? And this girl died 56 days after the election on 12/29, which is the 201st prime number. These big numbers with the Jesuits. And the election was on 11/3, and she died. They reported her death on January 13th, a lot like 113 too. And the film came out on the 113th day of 1999. And, look how this talked about Chris Klein up here. Right? Chris Klein, he's the guy in American Pie and so on, but he's also from Omaha. And if you go from the day that she died to his birthday, it just so happens to be 75 days before his birthday, and they reported her death 75 days after her own birthday on Halloween, or the day before Halloween. And Omaha on the Francis Bacon ciphers equals 75, right? And if you go from the day she died to Reese Witherspoon's birthday, it's 83 days, and Reese Witherspoon equals 83 and 218. And the word election equals 38 and 83. Right? So she dies age 38. She's in the film Election. So the film is set in Omaha. Omaha equals 38. Just makes me wonder. Pay attention to Omaha on that day, Think about how 9/11 is important to 322 as well, and George Bush being in Skull and Bones. After 9/11, George Bush went to Offutt Air Force Base. The night before, I saw a UFO for the first time in my life, and I told the story a billion times, but I was coming back from a made-up JV football game in the town I live in, and I lived in Council Bluffs, Iowa, which is basically a suburb of Omaha, right across the river. And there was a floating metal H thing, and it followed us all the way to Council Bluffs, and it disappeared, and there was lights all over in the sky. I slept in my friend's room. We put shit on front of the windows and everything. And the very next day we woke up, and I was going to school, and then all the stuff of 9/11 was on the TV before I went to school. So, and then George Bush came to Offutt Air Force Base. I've always wondered about that, If it was some type of drone or whatever else, something was going on around Omaha that night in the sky. And then George Bush comes to Offutt Air Force Base. But notice Chris Klein equals 322 in the Francis Bacon ciphers. Reese Witherspoon born on 322. Matthew Broderick, Ferris Bueller, he's the main guy in the movie. He's born on the 80th day of the year, which is also 21/3, and Omaha, Nebraska equals 80. Omaha's 213 and satanic. 9/11 is a span of 161 days before 218. And Omaha, Nebraska equals 161 in the Francis Bacon ciphers. I also point out Dick Cheney was born in Lincoln. And Bob Kerrey, the guy who said 9/11 was a 30-year conspiracy. And then the interview guy says, according to Article 3, Section 333, because they wanted you to know about that back in the day. I'm telling you. They created conspiracy theories. They wanted people to follow them. It's way bigger than what people know. They've created a culture of conspiracy theorists on purpose. And then, it's all built up to this revolution. I've talked about this for a long time. And look at Donald Trump. Look what Donald Trump did, They built it up. They QAnon and everything else going on. And people just eat it up. So, just makes me wonder, Lincoln's not too far from Omaha. There's something important to this. I can't place my finger on it. And in relation to 322, really quick, we got this thing about Dustin Diamond being hospitalized with cancer too. And he's from Port Washington, Wisconsin. And that stands out to me because when I was a kid, I used to love the show called Step by Step with Suzanne Summers in it. And Zach literally just made a blog post about the show that she's in called Three's Company, that is about apartment 201. But, Suzanne Summers also in Step by Step. She's the mom, and that show takes place in Port Washington, Wisconsin, right? Or a fictional version of Port Washington, Wisconsin. And then I see Dustin Diamond is in the news, and he's from Port Washington. Look at Cancer. He's 44. Cancer's 44. His name's DD, right? D is the fourth letter, 44. Saved by the Bell, 194 in Francis Bacon. Screech, 194 in Jewish. And Screech Powers, 194. And I don't know if somebody pointed out this to me or not, but just thinking about it, thinking about owls, right? And Moloch and whatever else, right? Screech powers, the power of the owl or something. I don't know. Just throw that out there. Yeah, so Zach did this. Zach did a post about Apartment 201, and then like the next day, there was a story about Suzanne Summers in the media about the death of this Mark Peter Richmond guy. And I'm just making this, I guess. Look at the gematria of this. This is once again why the Francis Bacon ones are important. Step by step equals 199 in Francis Bacon. Port Washington equals 199 and also 251 in the Francis Bacon. Suzanne Summers' full name equals 251. Dustin Diamond equals 199. He's from Port Washington, right? Step by step. Three's Company equals 189. The show's final episode was on 18/9. Suzanne Summers equals 189. The other star in the show is John Ritter, who equals 189 in the Francis Bacon ciphers. So, and John Ritter died on 9/11, so, his name in Francis Bacon also equals 185, like World Trade Center, and how they happened 185 days after Osama bin Laden's birthday. Also wonder, too, in regards to Patrick Ewing, right, because the dad on the show, on Step by Step, is Patrick Duffy, and he's known for playing Bobby Ewing on the show Dallas, right? Think about how the synchronicity with Richard Quinn and Dallas and Dan Quinn. I just feel like there's something important to that. His name's, Bobby Ewing. He's on the show Dallas. I also think of the uncle on the show, Uncle Cody, right? And the guy who plays him, he is also famous for the show called Dallas. So, I recently just watched the Goofy movie with my son, too, and JT on the show, his best friend is played by Jason Marsden, and he's the voice of Max Goof on the Goofy movie, so I don't even know. And his name equals 185, and I blogged about Dustin Diamond a while back, and it was about Joe Dirt 2, which is funny because just the other day at work I talked about the film Joe Dirt 2 being better than the first one. I think it's a better movie. Same with Hot Tub Time Machine. I like the second one better than the first one, which a lot of times the first movie seems to be the better movie, but on the movies I like the second one better for some reason, but I don't know. Oh yeah, there we go. Maybe somebody put that in the comments. Screech owl or something. Maybe not. Huh. So, whatever. Let's leave it here. The video's like way longer than I wanted, but I don't know. I feel like there's something important to Omaha with all of this. Maybe Warren Buffett. Maybe there's something with Warren Buffett. So Warren Buffett equals really quick. Video's already so long. Warren Buffett equals... Is that how you spell it? Equals 75. Hold on. Just want to make sure it's not just one T or something. Welcome to my speeding fast internet. Warren Buffett. Huh. So equals 75 just like Omaha and the Francis Bacon ciphers. I'm just thinking about this because of all the other people, like Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, all these rich people. I wonder what Warren Edward Buffett is. Interesting, maybe. Maybe connected to the World Trade Center. Warren Buffett 316? I did talk about that a little bit. I do not know. Omaha was important too when that Wendy's with the Umbrella Man, and then I talked about the Wendy's. So I had Synchronicity at that Wendy's where the cops got shot up, right? And that was also on the date 8/26, where the cameraman from the TV show Cops died at the Wendy's in Omaha, so that's another reason why I'm wondering about Omaha, and Omaha equals 38, and so we'll see. I don't know. something important to that. And of course, I live in the Omaha area, and it's 3 months and 8 days after my 38th birthday. So, just gonna watch that date. I feel like there is something I'm supposed to learn on that day for sure. There's something very, very synced up to it. Dan Quinn is also really important too because of 2017, right? When my uncle died, and it was synced up to the Atlanta Falcons being in the Super Bowl that year. So we put it in here. He used to be the Falcons head coach, right? Dan Quinn. It was synced up to Matt Ryan and my cousin Ryan, and the Dolphins quarterbacks were Matt Ryan and Ryan Tannehill, right? And Ryan Tannehill was hurt, and then Matt Ryan, and then Matt came in, and then, or wasn't, who was it? I can't even think of it now. Not Matt Ryan, but whatever. The one guy's name was Ryan, and then it was also Matt Moore. It was Matt Moore and Ryan Tannehill, and I was talking all about the Dolphins synced up to it, and then Matt Ryan, the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons, went on to the Super Bowl and so on. So, and Atlanta Falcons also equal 239. So, there's something. And that Wendy's shooting was also wasn't it in Atlanta? Or it was in Georgia, at least. And of course, there was a big thing with George, right? George Floyd and Georgia and a whole bunch of stuff. So, I'll just leave it here. Need to do some more research, but there is something very synced up to 9/11, and then the 218 synced to 9/11. So, it's an important day. But all right, we'll see what's going on with it. I'm going to keep following the narrative and see the They Live stuff, and we'll see what happens, I guess. Have a good one. Peace.